that in 2000, 68% of 4th graders couldn't read proficiently at grade level? Did you know that 83% of 12th graders were not proficient in math? That 82% were not proficient in science? These statistics have held steady for years, leading to an increased emphasis on accountability and the No Child Left Behind Act. As you can see by these surprising statistics, there was a need for change in America's education system. In fact, it was deemed an emergency. No Child Left Behind marked a pivotal event in education. It affected teachers, students, and even school districts, and it was named by President George W. Bush. Cholin and Fouts note that it was signed to eliminate education problems. The plan was to close the achievement gap with accountability, flexibility, and choice, so that no child was left behind. This act was supposed to be a reliable and valid indicator and was assessed through standardized testing by informing parents and communities of the progress with a fail status that involved negative publicity and even sanctions. No Child Left Behind was supposed to focus on disparities as well, involving race and socioeconomic status. There were differences between students in test grades, between minorities and their white peers, with minorities scoring lower in reading and math, which was a big issue. Also, children were scoring lower who were from poorer socioeconomic situations. In his article, in Hewitt's article, he stated that No Child Left Behind was used to bridge the gap between hopelessness and helplessness for millions of educationally deprived children. It was supposed to further the promise of Brown versus Board of Education and focus on equality, which is a constitutional promise. However, while the purpose of No Child Left Behind was to help all children by improving schools, it was not considering all types of children or all types of school districts. Even though the original ideas of equal schools were supposed to have promise and purpose for children, they did not acknowledge difference in diversity of schools and different learnings for children, and that you can't only rely on a test to indicate progression. This is neither sufficient nor realistic. While there was undoubtedly issues in the education system leading to the need for change, the No Child Left Behind Act causes more issues than good, and I found this through my extensive research on the subject. I'll be talking about how No Child Left Behind negatively influenced teachers, certain schools, and how children are actually being neglected and left behind due to the emphasis on test scores, rather than the individual child, which is why the policy should be changed. When looking at children, education is crucial for them to succeed in life. But when you're just looking at one test grade, that's the problem. That's not an adequate enough of resource to show what kind of future they're going to have. And you can't just do it mainly on a test. You have to reach out to children and find out what makes them unique. While the test scores were supposed to be a way to inform communities and parents of whether the school district was adequately teaching the child, it wasn't realistic. We all have different ways of learning, so to expect children to have only one style of learning isn't realistic. Imagine the pressure of being a child when you have to take this exam, and everything is relying on you doing really well on it. Because either your school is going to be labeled as pass or fail, or you're going to be labeled as that child who is either pass or fail. In both situations, it wouldn't matter whether you're having a bad day, whether you have shown progress in other schoolworks. It all comes down to this one test. Ultimately, a child should be showing progress, but if the progress isn't in the form of the actual test, they don't consider it. While No Child Left Behind is supposed to be focused on equality for all, certain children are ostracized. A child could be stigmatized for going to that school that's labeled as failing. Hewitt found that some have argued that certain students that were believed to perform poorly were suspended or expelled right before the testing date in order to not interfere with the high-pressured exam and make the school look bad. While components of No Child Left Behind feel like it helps children, it actually harms them. There should be more focus on individual student progression rather than primarily on test scores. When it comes to school, No Child Left Behind was supposed to break down the barriers for children, helping minorities and children of low socioeconomic statuses. However, the target groups are the ones who are actually being harmed. Schools with high socioeconomic statuses who have more resources are competing with other schools who don't have the same resources because they're from a low socioeconomic status. So it doesn't seem fair to be comparing these two. If it's not shown in the exam grades or the desirable level, these schools are punished, they're labeled failing. Schools with a majority of black students living in urban societies suffer, given that these schools are often punished for poor results of their mandated test scores. The backlash these schools face from not being on the top is they can be closed down. With regard to teachers, the focus on exam grades leads teachers to merely teach for the test. This results in children not being able to have a deeper understanding of the curriculum, finding out what interests them as individuals, so they have a better sense of the directions for their future. Imagine the teacher who feels torn between engaging with children into the curriculum or potentially losing her job for doing so. According to Hewitt, some teachers went as far as replacing incorrect answers submitted by students in order to inflate school performance. Teachers have to be motivated, challenge children, and provide students with tools they need to flourish. With the current No Child Left Behind, teachers are not providing knowledge that can stick with children, and instead are spewing information for the exam and are hoping that children are going to regurgitate it. Both the teachers, students, and schools are suffering from No Child Left Behind. There needs to be change in the way that No Child Left Behind is used. While the Act has good intention, it is neglecting certain students and schools and not focusing on their individual goals. Imagine your grandchildren's future if there are no changes brought to No Child Left Behind, where they feel the pressure relying on one grade, where they aren't given the tools they actually need to succeed, where their schools don't have time to thoroughly go over the curriculum and spark interest in the students because they're afraid of getting closed down. And the teachers who represent an important part of knowledge for the children are too busy focusing on the upcoming test because they're afraid of losing their jobs. However, with changes made to the policy, children can expand on topics that interest them and get an education in which they can thrive from. Think about which future you want for your children and grandchildren. Changes must be made if we want a better future for future generations. No Child Left Behind Act is the largest federal government in the United States. However, even in its effort to close the academic gap in achievement, there shows to be no equality. Consequently, academic achievement generally shows slow improvement or even stagnation. The reauthorization of No Child Left Behind Act needs to be established, one that considers how different children learn and how different children learn and how individuals and schools work different paces due to certain factors. The education policy is not truly fulfilling the goal of Brown versus Board of Education, or instilling true equal opportunities in the school system. An education policy should have a broader range of parameters, allowing schools not to be worried about sanctions, segmentation, and actually helping students. Ultimately, the idea of one-size-fits-all approach is not effective. Different schools have different issues and different types of intervention should be pursued. While attention is needed for all these issues, they do not necessarily require the same remedy, which educational policy should take into account. We as a society need to think about the future, think about our grandchildren. Everything in life isn't solved in a standardized testing format, so children are not going to succeed in the workforce if that's the main thing being focused on in schools. In conclusion, education should be about children expanding their knowledge, not only knowing specific things in order to pass the test. This is not adequate in judging their overall intelligence. Using a quote by Plato, he states, "Do not train children to learn by force and harshness, but direct them to it by what amuses their minds, so that you may be better able to discover with accuracy the peculiar bent of the genius in each."
All right.